Hey guys, coming at you on Labor Day. Wanted to shoot a quick message out on getting legislation started. I've been getting a lot of questions and a lot of people are really wanting to know what to do to really get some things started in their state on statewide legislation. So I wanted to shoot a quick message out. First off, hopefully everybody got a chance to spend a little bit of extra time on the weekend with their kids. I know for myself, I got an extra day with Levi and just absolutely loved it. But as always, my heart goes out to those dads, and there's some others out there too that still have not had some good quality equal time with their kids. And my heart goes out to you. I know tonight as I just got done dropping Levi off, and then as I come back and he plays out in the yard outside my condo and he digs, and he's supposedly digging a hole all the way to China. So far he's made about 11 inches, so he's got a little ways to go to get to China, but he left his shovel out today, and so when I came home I saw it, and as you can imagine, coming back to an empty house and then seeing that shovel sitting out there from when he was out playing, it's hard to think that, okay, I'm not going to see him for a whole nother week again. So I know there's a lot of parents out there that don't even get that much, so my heart goes out to you guys. But I did want to shoot a message out about getting legislation started, things that you can do. Because my goal is to not make this the Mark Ludwig show. It's to try and empower other people so you can do what you need to do in your own state. So my goal is to help give ideas and suggestions out there. I hope I don't come across that I'm the only way to do, my way is the only way to do things. Plenty of other ways out there. And I hope it doesn't come across arrogant. But I do have about a 25 to 30 year track record of being around the legislative process. So I wanted to try and share some tips. But as far as getting legislation started, I think the most important thing to do, number one on the list, is to build relationships with your state legislators. I would always start out by going with your own state representative and your own state senator. Most legislators, the biggest people they care about is people that are their own constituents. You don't want to try and start out with people from a couple districts over or across the state. Start out with your own. They usually have the easiest open door access. Unless you have some kind of another common bond. Maybe you went to the college together, maybe you were in the same fraternity, maybe your kids do something together, if you've got a personal relationship. But the key is to do that. You want to try and build personal relationships. So many times I see people making comments on Facebook where they're making comments that they demand that their representatives do this, and they're going to threaten to vote them out of office. And I know your heart's in the right place. I know that we're angry because things aren't moving as fast as we want them to move. But I'll just let you know, from a legislator standpoint, no different than you. How do you feel if someone you don't know comes up and demands you to do something? That's probably not the first person you're going to want to work with. Usually the people you want to work with are people you have personal relationships with. So I always recommend for people to reread Dale Carnegie's famous book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. They say that's the #1 most read business book of all time is the How to Win Friends and Influence People. And if you haven't read it, I encourage you to get that book this week. That's just a standard book, not just to be successful in business, but in anything in life, but especially in legislation, it definitely helps too, those same principles. But never threaten, never say you're going to vote people out of office. The reason is you create an enemy. And a lot of times people are like, well, I am going to vote them out of office. Well, what happens if you don't vote them out of office and they become the chair of the Judicial Committee when our bill goes in front of the Judicial Committee? Now we have our biggest enemy sitting up there. So be it's very critical how you work these relationships with people. But the key is you want to get to know them. So I always recommend start with your own legislator first. Usually what I recommend is asking them questions. What do they know about shared parenting? What do they know on the statistics of how many, and I usually start out with father's approach, and this is not to alienate mothers. As I said, I know there's, Rhonda and Tanya and Jody, there's a bunch of great mothers that are fighting for this cause. But if I'm a guy, I'm starting out from my perspective as I'm talking to them, and I can broaden that perspective down the road. But it helps because the statistics of a fatherless society are very powerful when you're talking to a legislator. So I just talk about the fact, are they aware of all the statistics talking about how teen suicide rates and incarceration rates and violent crime rates are all tied to fatherlessness? So I get them to agree on something that's pretty obvious. It's very hard to not agree with that. They know those statistics. They know it's out there. Then I get them to agree on the fact that, yes, there are some deadbeat dads out there, but you can't convince me that 24.6 million kids in America have deadbeat dads. So slowly you're bringing them around to the fact that, hey, there is a problem here. There are some great dads out there too. As I said, this is where I start from my perspective, so not leaving the mothers out. We will get to that in that conversation, I can promise you, for the mothers that are out there. But I want to try and build a relationship with them. That's going to be critical. A lot of times people are like, well, I'm just going to get the legislation started, try and find a sponsor and get them to sponsor the bill, and then boom, we can get the whole process moving. The challenge is if you don't have a strong relationship with somebody, you're not going to be able to guide the process. There is so much more to legislation. Getting a bill sponsored in the legislative process is, I'm not exaggerating, that's only about 5% or less of the total effort. That's the easy part. The hard part is getting it to maneuver through getting a read on the House floor and then getting it assigned to the committee that you want. Then making sure that you're going to get a hearing. Then making sure it gets voted in the hearing. Then make sure it's get passed back to the floor for the third reading. Then making sure it gets passed over to the other chamber. There are so many different pieces to this chessboard that you've got to get some relationships built. So I start out building the relationships with my own state senator or state rep. Then I ask them for a referral. Hey, who do you know? Normally, most states are going to have, in the House of Representatives, over 100 different representatives. And I tell you what, they know the other representatives. So you want to find out from them. Do they know somebody else who went through a situation like this? If there is, they're probably going to know that, and they can tell you, oh, yeah, so-and-so from this district. Now you call them up and say, hey, my state representative recommended that I talk to you. A lot of times I'll even try and get them to send an email to open the door for me. But it really is, it's like a chess match or almost like playing pool, where each shot lines you up for the next. Every time you meet with a legislator, you need to have a predetermined goal. What is my goal of this meeting? Number one should always be build a stronger relationship. Number two is always, who else can they open the door for you to meet with? I never let an end dead end. I always try and get that door open to the next representative. And then, like I said, it's like running a pool table or running a chessboard. You're trying to find out who else do they know that they can open the door for. That is the most critical part, is you're going to need that down the road. You're going to need relationships with everybody that's on the committee. Normally, it's either going to be a family services committee or a judicial committee that your bills are going to be assigned to. You want to make sure that you know on a very personal basis those people, that when they hear your name, there's no doubt in their mind what you're calling about, and that it's a positive experience when they hear your name. So somebody said, what state is this, Lee? This is for any state at all that you can introduce this legislation. My goal is to try and empower you in your own states that you can do whatever you need. I'm always here to help. Jeremy Roberts is here to help. Linda, Ken, the Missouri team. We're very fortunate in Missouri. We've got a powerful team, and we're always willing to help in any way we can, but our goal is to try and empower you. We want to sort of give you advice and tips along the way, but you're going to have to do the work. Somebody said they can't hear anything. Can everybody else hear your things? At least I'm hoping so. If everybody can't hear, please let me see. Okay, it looks like everybody else can hear. I apologize, Derek. For some reason, Derek can't hear, but it sounds like everybody else can. Next thing you want to do is build relationships with your legislative assistants. Those are going to be critical relationships to build too along the way. A lot of times, most representatives are just so busy they're bogged down with so many different bills. Man, if you can get a relationship with the legislative aides, because those are ones who will help steer the process. And many times they can give you tips and heads up when your bills are coming in front of committees. Number three is to narrow the focus. There are so many different issues with this. The narrower you can make the focus on the initial bill, I'll just tell you, if you've got 8 to 10 different points on your bill, that's about 8 to 10 different reasons it can be bogged down in a committee. 9 times out of 10, if something gets bogged down in a committee and doesn't get a vote, the reason is there were too many issues on that. The simpler and the more condensed you can keep your first bill, the better. That's not saying the other items aren't important. They're very important. But you have to have a strategy here. What's the easiest way you can get a bill going through? Can you tell the info you're telling us now on your website? Manny, yes, I do have a website, the AFESP. I'm not here to promote that because I'm talking primarily to the Father's Rights Movement, but I do put my notes on there after each week. I do put the notes up there so anybody can have access to those. The key is you want to try and get a bill, the easiest bill that you can get through, which gives you momentum and credibility. A lot of times, if your bill gets slammed the first year around, you kind of blow credibility for the next time you want to bring a bill. If you can get a bill through, and Kentucky is a great example. A lot of people last year were saying, Kentucky's bill wasn't very strong. It was only for temporary orders. No, that was a genius strategy they had. Because what they did is they got a bill through, and matter of fact, it was unanimous in both the House and the Senate. And I hate to mention names, but kudos to Jason Petrie, the state rep, who helped sponsor the bill down in Kentucky, and to Matt Hale from National Parents Organization, who helped guide that through, and a bunch of other people in Kentucky, so I apologize if I'm leaving people out. But it was a genius strategy. Get any bill at all through the door. Now they've got the momentum on their side this year to go back and get some more things done. So make sure that you narrow your focus. You want to have an idea of what the follow-up bills are going to be, but don't try and cram them all through the first time. You're going to get bogged down. You're going to get stymied. The fourth thing is set a realistic timetable. Trust me, I know the sand's going through the hourglass. Guys, my little boy is 7.5 years old, and to this day, I only get 6 overnights a month with him. So I understand that the sand's going through the hourglass. But I don't want to sacrifice the war for the battle. My goal is to choose the war over the battle. So yes, as much as I would like to get things done tomorrow, I also understand there's a strategy that I want to make sure in the long term we leave things better off for everyone. So it's not going to happen a lot of times as quick as you want. In a lot of states, if you don't have momentum, you're better off your first year. Don't introduce any legislation at all. None. Your goal for an entire year is you want to be making trips to your state capital, building those relationships. Get to know those state reps. Get to know those senators, especially the committee members. Get to know their legislative assistants so that when you do introduce a bill, you know exactly who to call to guide that bill through the process. And then the last step is build a coalition. You're going to need a team. We are very, very fortunate in Missouri, as I said. We've got myself, Jeremy, Linda, Ken, Scott, and some other really good people. Matter of fact, Linda Jones, a grandmother from Poplar Bluff, has played a key piece of this legislative process this past year. She's just been dynamite. So build yourself a coalition. Along with that, we want to protect the branding. A second ago, I talked about the fact that I've got a database that we're collecting on the AFESP.com website. I've got my own website. I've got my own Facebook page. But right now, I'm on the Fathers' Rights Movement page. So I'm very careful to make sure that I don't overly try and promote my own personal Facebook page. There's sort of a protocol that we all have to understand as we go through this process. Almost like a branding for a corporation. You know, no company is allowed to use the name Golden Arches because the Golden Arches is a branded concept for McDonald's. Coca-Cola's logo, they spend millions of dollars a year in lawsuits to protect that trademark branded name. Well, there's organizations out there. The largest organization within this movement is the Fathers' Rights Movement. Okay? I am not a board member on that. I'm very, very active, and as most of you know, every week I do a Facebook Live. So I'm very careful to make sure that I don't speak on behalf of the Fathers' Rights Movement unless there's something specific they asked me to do. They had asked me to speak at the Million Parent March in D.C. in a couple weeks, so I'm doing that. But I'm very careful about what I say. Why? Because when that brand is behind my name, I'm representing the Fathers' Rights Movement, and I want to make sure I don't do anything to tarnish the Fathers' Rights Movement. Okay, so each organization has its own idiosyncrasies. We've got the National Parents Organization and Time to Put Kids First, which are very good at research. We've got Leading Women for Shared Parenting. There's a lot of great organizations out there. The key is to make sure how you're representing each organization and to make sure that you're more or less sharing information from them. It's not a matter of who gets credit. I had a discussion this week with somebody who had created a multiple different sites that were almost like mirror sites of different organizations that are out there, and no real original material. And I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. I hope their heart was in the right place, but you have to be very careful. If you create a duplicate website giving people the impression that you're the National Parents Organization, realize, guys, these people already have relationships with different legislators. So when, say, Matt Hale of the National Parents Organization calls up a state rep or state senator, in their mind, they have an image of what the National Parent Organization represents. We don't want to misrepresent that. We don't want to create confusion. I want them to know when Matt Hale calls up, or anybody else from there, they know who's representing them. Leading Women for Shared Parenting. We've got people like Terry Brennan and Suzanne Venker. They've got their own branded sort of reputation, if you will. It's critical that we don't try and distort that. So if you see something on one of their websites, it's best not to copy and paste it to try and give the impression it was your own. It's best to share it from their website. And once again, it's not about who gets credit. It's wanting to make sure that their branded reputation stays intact. And we're having to fight this more and more because as you know, over the last few months, there have been a bunch of, and we believe a lot of them were put up by people overseas. And not to be paranoid, but all of us have seen the different things where some prince from Nigeria supposedly died and they're going to leave you $25 million and all you need to do is leave them your routing number and your bank information or send them a $5,000 deposit to get the millions of dollars. Well, unfortunately, the new trend now is to set up basically mirror websites to try and do the same type of things with charities and causes, where they try and get people funneled over to an organization thinking they're supporting an organization, and they're really not. They're just building up a huge database of people, and then they're going to try and do that for, you know, trying to get people to send money to Nigeria. So there's some legitimate websites out there, like the Fathers' Rights Movement and all the state chapter pages. Just so you know, every state chapter of the Missouri Fathers' Rights Movement, the legitimate pages will say the blank Fathers' Rights Movement and insert your state. So it will always be the Missouri Fathers' Rights Movement, the Illinois Fathers' Rights Movement, the Colorado Fathers' Rights Movement. If it's not one of those, that is not the true Fathers' Rights Movement page. And we're very fortunate. We've got a lot of great people working in this movement. Like I said, we may not always agree on everything. We have different strategies. I know there's a girl that I've got the utmost respect for. Tanya Myers in Iowa has been doing some great work with CPS. We disagree occasionally on strategy, but I know Tanya respects me, and I know she respects. She knows that I respect her. Matter of fact, I just gave her a referral a couple weeks ago of someone who I thought would be very, very good working with her on a certain issue. So that's one thing that most of the leaders of these organizations, we all sort of have a genuine respect. We may come at this with a different approach. We may have different strategies. But we recognize each other. I think of like a Cash Jackson and a Philly Slim and Thomas Fiddler and Nicholas Dreesen and Christy Beck. And there's just so many people that I have so much respect for. Guys, we are so close to getting some things done. We need to make sure that we all lock arms and do it respectfully. So as I said, as you share ideas from the pages, you're always welcome to share anything. Matter of fact, we love the exposure. But please, rather than copy and paste, make sure that you share. If you see something with the Fathers' Rights logo on it, don't erase the logo and then put it out as your own. Respect the fact that someone from the Fathers' Rights Movement put that on before you share it. So just an idea. I'm getting excited. I will be a part of the Fathers' Rights Movement. I'm going to be speaking, I believe Monday afternoon I'll be speaking. And then Tuesday morning I'm speaking, I believe, in Lower Senate Park on getting statewide legislation passed. So I'm going to be going into a lot of detail of the stuff that I'm covering here. This Wednesday I am going to, and like I said, I try not to put over things that are on my own other page. But I don't want to bombard people and flood the Fathers' Rights Movement page. So Wednesday I am doing a Facebook Live on the Americans for Equal Shared Parenting Facebook page. That's going to be talking about getting things started in Washington, D.C. with Title 4D. As I'm going to D.C., one of my goals this month is to sort of open the door to the power team. And guys, I'll tell you what, like I said, I've been around politics for actually 30 years, aside from some health challenges that took me out for a handful of years. But Jeremy, Linda, Ken, myself, and Scott, I have just never in my life seen a team like that we all seem to work very well together. Each of us has a different skill set, but boy, coming together, we're powerful. So I think if the five of us can really start working hard on Title 4D, and we're going to be bringing some other people into the picture, but one of my goals is to open the door for some really neat things we have coming up. So I'm going to lay out a little bit of a game plan for that this Wednesday on the Facebook Live on the Americans for Equal Shared Parenting page. But anyways, guys, hope everyone had a great Labor Day. Hopefully some of this information will help you out. As I said, I'm always willing to help anytime I can. Jeremy and I are always willing to help out. We've already done several conference calls with a bunch of different states. We're more than willing to do them for anyone else. So thanks a lot, guys, and let's go get some things changed.